KDE's had another phenomenal year and is still massively growing in popularity. Coming next year, there's going to be 2 new devices from Valve, both running KDE Plasma, the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame. Now, obviously, I would see less people doing desktop mode on the Steam Frame, but it's still something shipping with KDE Plasma. People first seeing Linux are going to see KDE Plasma. It is now becoming the actual face of Linux. For a long time, that face was GNOME, mostly the Ubuntu version of GNOME, but still GNOME. That is finally changing, and in my opinion, is about damn time. KDE's fundraiser is doing phenomenal numbers. Just looking at PayPal, it has now passed 160,000 euros. Looking at everything merged together, just in the last 3 months, 338,000 euros. That doesn't account for the start of the year. They probably made, I would say, just on donations, close to 400,000 euros this year, and there's other stuff outside of this. But that doesn't mean that every single thing is perfect, because I want to talk about the future of This Week in Plasma. So this is a weekly update blog that Nate Graham runs. It was previously on his personal site known as Pointy a Stick, and probably sometime in the last year or so has moved over to the KDE infrastructure and now happens on the KDE blogs when it decides it wants to open. This is where it has been living for quite a while now. Even if you're a KDE dev, you probably don't know every single thing happening in KDE, especially in things that you're not personally involved in. This is something that a lot of people read, even people outside of KDE that just want to keep an eye on the desktop and just look at what neat things are happening. For its entire life, this has been an absolutely phenomenal resource, but Nate Graham is a very busy person and has a very busy life, and he may not be able to keep running it the way he's been running it. The march of time and accumulation of responsibilities. My own role in KDE has changed substantially during these 8 years. I started out in 2017 as a volunteer and fell in love with KDE, squeezing my KDE time into a long daily train commute to and from work. And by 2019, I had a full-time job at Blue Systems doing what I loved. In 2022, I was elected to the KDE EV Board of Directors until October of this year. Each of these transitions heralded the accumulation of more responsibilities beyond This Week in Plasma. And at the beginning of this year, everything changed once again when he became the co-owner and CEO of Tech Paladin Software, the successor of Blue Systems consultancy business. This is where the Valve contract for KDE work is being handled. This is also where people like David Edmondson happen to be working. I need help. I truly want to keep publishing this blog, but there comes a point where I have to face facts. My time and energy and budgets are not as unlimited as I wish they were. In addition, Nate has 2 kids, they are 9 and 13, and, you know, you kind of want to be there as a parent, you don't just want to be working all of the time. Nate is a very, very busy person, and wants to do other things. So it's time to begin the painful but necessary process of ensuring that those budgets remain big enough to cover my work and family responsibilities. In 2026, I'm actively looking for a person or team interested in taking over This Week in Plasma. Until then, I plan to reduce the frequency of posts based on how busy my schedule is. Expect one every 2 weeks, so, you know, this fortnight in Plasma, or every 3 or 4 weeks, which I think also makes sense this month in Plasma, which also does cover the fact where you might have some weeks where not really much is happening. Like around the holiday season, there are going to be these weeks where, yes, people are still doing stuff, but a lot less people are doing stuff, and there's a lot less to write about. So in those cases, doing it over the entire month kind of just makes a lot more sense. If anyone reading would like to see This Week in Plasma remain a weekly fixture as much as I do, the best way to make it happen is to get involved and help out. I would be thrilled to hand off This Week in Plasma to the next generation. Nothing about it is particularly difficult, it's just kinda time consuming. Time to notice or seek out relevant changes, time to collect them in a big list, time to sort out the relevance for readership, time to write a little blurb for each of them, time to take screenshots showcasing the changes, and time to edit and polish the post. I'm happy to teach, coach, or mentor anyone who wants to get involved, so if you've been wondering how you can get involved in something that matters without technical skills beyond basic Markdown and Git, this is a perfect way to do it. And if you are technical, I'm sure there are low-hanging fruit opportunities for automation that I never pursued. He did try and mess around with AI a couple of times, but it was kinda terrible. And you could do automation for a lot of things, but as Nate says down in the comment section, a dump of all merge/fix merge requests and bug reports will number in the hundreds. A big part of the secret sauce is really in choosing what to report and what to omit. Even then, it's a careful balance, and I probably haven't always gotten it right. For example, reporting too many bug fixes makes the product seem buggier than it is. There's not really anywhere near as much value in just saying, oh, here is every random little thing that changed. Yes, that has some level of use, but what makes it interesting is showing the interesting stuff, showing the stuff that sort of grabs people's attention, which they otherwise may not have even known changed. Things like, oh, we fixed a minor rendering issue or fixed a minor spacing issue, in most cases, probably isn't that exciting. But something like, oh, we introduced a new way for our tile editor thing to work, that actually is a lot more exciting. There have been quite a few replies to this post, some of which are people wanting to help out, others are people just congratulating Nate for all the work he's done and all this good stuff. So I would be surprised if somebody doesn't go and take over this work, but if you are someone who does want to go do so, does want to get involved in some way, be sure to go reach out to Nate either through his email or the relevant matrix room and, give him your ideas. Obviously, if you just want to go and write one post, for example, it's not really very useful. He's trying to find someone to do this long term, but if you have some idea for how you can make this happen, yeah, get involved. And if you got something where you don't really know if you want to email it to Nate, I know he does watch the channel from time to time, so leave any ideas you might have in the comment section down below. And finally, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the readers and community members. This blog post series is something I never really expected to become popular, and it was my pleasure to publish it almost every week. Honestly, I am happy that things like this exist in the FOSS space, because for a long time there was this sort of separation between the developer and the user, where users didn't really know what developers were doing. Even though, anybody could get involved, anyone could become a developer, there was this separation. It wasn't really a clear bridge. Having things like This Week in Plasma acts as that bridge. Today, Plasma and KDE in general are strong and prosperous with growing base of users, hardware partners, for example, Valve, distros pre-installing our software, Bazzite, SteamOS, so on and so forth, and small donor financing. In some ways, KDE is outgrowing This Week in Plasma. It's no longer really necessary to provide weekly evidence that we're still keeping the lights on. The evidence is all around us. I do agree you don't need to prove that you're doing work, but I do think that by showing the work that is being done, it encourages people who may not really see the more subtle changes being made to actually get involved in some way. But it's still a nice thing to have, I think. I personally would feel sad if I had to abandon This Week in Plasma without anyone to hand it off to. So if you're interested in getting involved, please reach out. But if helping take over This Week in Plasma isn't your cup of tea, there's always the KDE fundraiser. It is doing phenomenally well. But that doesn't mean it couldn't do better. Wait. It went up about 13,000 since he wrote this. This wasn't that long ago, man. Honestly, I have no idea what's going to happen next year, because the first year the fundraiser with the Christmas donation was done, most distros didn't have Plasma 6 yet. Now most of them do. Next time, every single one of them is going to have it, Plus, there's going to be 2 new pieces of Valve hardware, and whilst I don't think those show the Christmas donation prompt, it will encourage more people to go and use Plasma. Whilst Nate is employed to do KDE work, well really he's his own employer and he has contract work to do at the company, this is not like his main thing. The blog is not the main thing. The work that is being paid for is the main thing. The blog is something he chooses to do additionally that takes time out of things he otherwise would be doing in his real life with his family and other things like that. Now, this is one of these areas where, one of these rare areas actually, where I do think the GNOME approach actually is better. Maybe not better, but at least more sustainable. Over in GNOME land, they have This Week in GNOME. Now, it's not actually This Week in GNOME because some weeks are taken off. For example, there was none last week, and there was none for a little bit of time in here. So it's This Week in GNOME every other week. Sometimes it's weekly, sometimes not, depends on the time of the year. This has been going on for about 4 or so years now, and this works very differently to the way that This Week in Plasma does. Let's take the latest one. This is curated by someone known as Felix, but each of the things that are in this week, these are reported by the individual contributors, by the individual maintainers. Here we have a dev from an application called Drum Machine. Here's another one called Gear Core. This is from a shell extension called Yet Another Radio. And rather than just having the one person who is writing the This Week blog doing all of the work, you have the people that are more intimately involved in the individual projects writing their parts for you. And then your job isn't to write the entire thing yourself, it's to then curate which ones you think make the most sense to include in this iteration of the blog post. This does create a bit of a thematic and writing style clash, but it also massively decreases the amount of work the individual person has to do. And considering that Nate doesn't think he has time to keep it going as a weekly thing, at least considering an approach like this might be a good way to do things. I do think you want to sort of curate the way things are written so things aren't just like announcements of new versions, which sometimes this ends up being. But overall, I think this is an approach which could be modified to suit the style that This Week in Plasma actually is. Whilst Nate is involved in a lot of things going on in KDE, he's not deeply involved in every single aspect of the environment, of the development ecosystem, and many of the developers who are deeply involved in various different sections already have their own blogs and would be able to tell a better story and a more in-depth approach of what their individual systems are actually doing. And creating workflow for this may require a bit of tinkering. Do you want to ask developers individually for contributions? This is a lot of work, and trying to send out emails and round people up. Do you want to create some sort of mass mailing list and then have developers send in things as they want to send in things? Do you want to do a communication channel ping on the channels already being used by KDE people like the Matrix and things like that? Do you want to just let people contribute things themselves and have some sort of contribution inbox that handles them? Whichever approach is taken, or maybe a combination of all of them, I would hope Nate is at least considering this approach and considering this model as a way to keep it going forward. Having it be in the style it's already in, where, you know, it's a very curated and custom written thing, I think would be neat, but doing it like This Week in GNOME, I don't think is inherently bad. But let me know your thoughts down below. Are you interested in helping out? If you are, contact Nate and, yeah, get involved. So, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you like This Week in Plasma? I'd love to know. Go subscribe as well, and if you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Sally Berapay, link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and the future is Plasma.